On a freezing winter night in 2010, in a remote rural area of Oregon, a young couple named Sarah and Ben, whose names have been changed, were driving home after visiting family in a nearby town. It was pitch black, with only the car's headlights illuminating the deserted road, winding through fields covered in white snow. Ben was driving, while Sarah sat in the passenger seat, both chatting happily about their trip and plans for the upcoming holidays. The atmosphere inside the car was warm and comfortable, a complete contrast to the biting cold outside. When the car had gone a considerable distance, through forests and open fields, Sarah suddenly saw a strange light in the distance, slightly to the right of the road. The light flickered and had an orange-red color. "Like fire," Sarah said. "Honey, it looks like someone is making a fire over there." Ben looked in the direction Sarah was pointing. He squinted, looking closer. That's strange. People rarely make fires in this area at this hour." They continued to drive closer. As they approached, the fire became clearer. It was burning quite high and seemed to be located in the middle of an open field, about a few dozen meters from the road. The closer they got, the more Sarah and Ben felt that something was wrong. That fire didn't look like a normal campfire. It seemed to be burning unusually fiercely. When the car reached the vicinity of the open field, Sarah and Ben were horrified to see what was happening around the fire. They saw a group of people kneeling around that fire. Those people were wearing long black robes, covering them from head to toe. On their heads, they wore strange masks, completely obscuring their faces. Jessica couldn't see the shapes of the masks clearly, but they sent a chill down her spine. And even more terrifying, above the fire, something was hanging. It was a strangely shaped object. Unclear what it was, but it looked dark and distorted. The firelight shone on the object, casting terrifying long shadows. Sarah and Ben looked at each other in horror. Both felt a bone-chilling cold spread through their bodies. They knew they had inadvertently witnessed something very evil. Sarah and Ben slowed down their car. They didn't dare drive directly past the open field. They parked the car a considerable distance from the fire, where the headlights were less likely to reach. They sat in the car, silently observing the strange scene unfolding. The group of people in black robes and masks were still kneeling around the fire, muttering words that Sarah and Ben couldn't clearly hear. A mixture of curiosity and fear made Sarah and Ben unable to sit still. They wanted to know more about who those people were and what they were doing. Ben whispered, "I think, maybe we should get a little closer?" His voice was slightly shaky. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but be careful, honey." They slowly opened the car doors, the small sound echoing in the silent space. The biting cold of the winter night rushed into the car. They stepped out, closing the car doors as gently as possible. Under the faint moonlight and the flickering light from the fire, Sarah and Ben tiptoed across the snow. Each of their footsteps created a small sound. They tried to be as silent as possible, moving towards the fire. As they got closer, they could hear the murmuring of the group more clearly. They were speaking in a strange language they had never heard before. The voices were monotonous, low-pitched, and seemed eerie. They could also see the object hanging above the fire more clearly. It was a figure, made from dry branches and rags, shaped like a human. The figure looked very frightening, with strange symbols drawn on it. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She knew this wasn't a joke. This group was performing some kind of ritual, an evil ritual related to demons. They stopped about a few dozen meters from the group. Sarah and Ben hid behind a line of trees, trying to observe without being detected. They saw the group performing strange movements, raising their hands to the sky and bowing their heads to the ground. They also saw one person in the group holding a gleaming knife. Ben whispered, "I think we should leave here. This is too strange and scary." Sarah nodded in agreement. She felt her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to get out of this place as quickly as possible. But just as they turned to go back to the car, a loud noise echoed. It seemed they had accidentally stepped on a large dry branch. The sound of the dry branch breaking echoed in the silent space, shattering the eerie atmosphere. Sarah and Ben froze, their hearts pounding. They knew they had been discovered. The group of people in black robes and masks suddenly stopped murmuring. They slowly raised their heads, turning towards Sarah and Ben. Although their faces were not visible through the masks, Sarah and Ben could feel the cold and terrifying eyes staring at them. An eerie silence enveloped the open field. Only the crackling of the fire and the faint whistling of the wind through the trees could be heard. Then, one person in the group slowly stood up. He was tall and gaunt, wearing the longest black robe in the group. He slowly turned towards Sarah and Ben. Sarah felt utter terror engulf her. She tightly gripped Ben's hand. "Honey, we should go," she said, her voice trembling. Ben also felt scared, but he tried to stay calm. He knew they couldn't run right now. The man in the black robe stood there, staring intently at them. Then, he slowly raised an arm, his long and gaunt finger pointing towards Sarah and Ben. Jessica felt as if an electric current ran down her spine. She had the feeling that the person was commanding some force to attack them. Just then, the others in the group also slowly stood up. They turned around, all facing Sarah and Ben. They stood in silence, staring at the two of them. Sarah and Ben felt as if they were being surrounded by evil forces. They knew that this group was not normal people. They were devil worshippers, and they didn't want outsiders witnessing their ritual. One person in the group slowly took a step forward. Then the second, the third. They began to move, their footsteps slow and steady on the snow. Sarah and Ben looked at each other in horror. They knew that the group was approaching them. They had no more time to hesitate. Ben tightly held Sarah's hand and whispered, "Run." Sarah and Ben turned around and ran frantically across the snow. They ran towards their car, their hearts pounding in their chests. They heard the footsteps of the group in black robes chasing closely behind them. Their footsteps were heavy and urgent, echoing in the silent space of the winter night. Sarah and Ben felt as if the breath of death was on the back of their necks. They ran as fast as they could, trying not to slip on the snow. The car's headlights were off, so they could only see the road by the faint moonlight. As they got close to the car, Ben quickly opened the door, and they both scrambled inside. Ben quickly closed the door and turned the key to start the engine. The engine started, but Sarah and Ben could still hear the footsteps of the group in black robes approaching. They were right next to their car. Ben slammed the gas pedal, and the car sped away at breakneck speed, its tires skidding on the snow. They looked in the rearview mirror and were horrified to see the group standing in the middle of the road, watching their car. Although the car had gone quite far, Sarah and Ben still felt as if the group was following them. They constantly had the feeling of being watched, of being stalked. Ben drove as fast as he could, trying to escape this terrifying deserted road. Sarah sat beside him, her face pale and full of fear. She didn't dare say anything, just held tightly onto Ben's hand. They drove through snowy fields, past silent forests, every time the car went around a curve or through a dark stretch of road. Sarah felt her heart clench. She was afraid that the group would suddenly appear in front of them. After a long and tense drive, they finally saw the lights of a town in the distance. Sarah and Ben breathed a sigh of relief. They knew they had escaped danger. When they reached the town, they drove straight to the police station. Sarah and Ben walked in, looking panicked and exhausted. They recounted the entire story to the police. About the group in black robes and masks, the strange ritual and the object hanging over the fire, and how they had been chased. The police listened carefully, but they seemed skeptical. They said that perhaps Sarah and Ben had imagined it all due to being too scared. They also said that strange things like that rarely happened in that area. However, Sarah and Ben firmly insisted that what they had seen and experienced was real. They provided information about the location where they had seen the group. The police promised to check the area, but they didn't seem overly concerned about Sarah and Ben's story. This disappointed Sarah and Ben. They knew that evil things existed out there, but no one believed them. After leaving the police station, Sarah and Ben drove to a hotel in town to rest. They didn't want to go home immediately. Both felt exhausted and were still trembling after what had happened. That night at the hotel, Sarah couldn't sleep at all. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of the group in black robes and masks, along with the strange object hanging over the fire. The eerie murmuring and the sound of chasing footsteps still echoed in her mind. Ben also didn't sleep well. He kept startling and looking out the window. He still felt as if someone was watching them. The next morning, Sarah and Ben decided they would never go back to that road again. They knew there were things they shouldn't delve deeper into. However, what they had witnessed had changed their lives forever. They no longer saw the world as they had before. They became more cautious, more vigilant about everything around them. Sometimes, on quiet late nights, Sarah still heard the faint echo of strange murmuring somewhere. She knew it was just a haunting memory, but it still made her feel scared. Ben also became quieter and more introspective. He would often check the doors and windows in the house, making sure everything was securely locked. Sarah and Ben tried to find ways to cope with their haunting experiences. They sought help from psychologists. Gradually, they learned to control their fear and live with the terrifying memories. However, they knew that what they had witnessed was real. They had seen a group performing an evil ritual with their own eyes, and they had been chased by some force. They believed that those people were still out there, lurking in the shadows, and perhaps they were still looking for the people who had witnessed their secret. Sarah and Ben lived in constant vigilance. They never dared to travel to remote areas at night anymore. They always felt as if a dark shadow was lurking somewhere near them. Their story is a warning about the dark secrets that can be hidden in the places we least expect. Sometimes, curiosity can lead us to unforeseen dangers. Years passed, but the haunting memories of that terrifying night never faded from Sarah and Ben's minds. They had tried to live normal lives, but they knew they were changed. They never dared to talk to anyone about what had happened, afraid that others wouldn't believe them or would think they were crazy. They kept that secret to themselves, sharing their fear only with each other. They still avoided that road, even though it was the shortest route to some places. Every time they drove near that area during the day, they still felt a strange unease. Sarah and Ben knew they were lucky to have survived. They didn't know who that group was, what they were doing, or what the object hanging over the fire was. But they knew it was something very evil, a dark force they couldn't understand. They believed that this world held more mysteries and terrifying things than we could see. And sometimes, the darkest secrets were hidden in remote, secluded places. Sarah and Ben's story is a reminder to always be cautious about things we don't fully understand. Sometimes, it's best to stay away from strange places and strange people. Because sometimes, curiosity can make you pay a very high price. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.